Proverbs chapter 17 is where we're starting today, our text verse, as we talk about true friendship from a biblical perspective. Proverbs chapter 17. The verse is also 17. Solomon says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." Now, we've had a change in our society over the last few years on the meaning of the word friend. With the advent of Facebook and Facebook friends, all of a sudden you can go unfriend people, you can mute people. Don't you wish you could mute people in real life? I mean, the other day I saw Donna walking through the house with a TV remote pushing the button, and she said, "It won't mute him. It won't, But wouldn't it be nice if we had, a mute button that we could go through life like you do on Facebook? I don't want to see these posts anymore. It's just, you remember the old insurance commercial with Beatrice talking about putting all her pictures on her wall and unfriending somebody. I love the little old lady. That's not how this works. But, we've got a real misconception of what friendship really is in our society. I saw a cartoon with a widow at a funeral home. Her husband's casket was there. There was a room full of empty chairs. And she was talking to the funeral director, and she said, "I really expected more people to be here. He had 500 Facebook friends." Well, there's a difference, right, in Facebook friends and what a real friend really is. When I was working on this, I ran across a quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, "Friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" I think that's pretty good. Sometimes that's how our friendship develops. But the Bible, as always, gives us some guidelines and gives us some input into what true friendships really are. And we're going to look first at the characteristics of a true friend. Now, there are obviously others. These are the verses that I found to share with you today. A good friend is consistent. That's the first part of this verse. A friend loves at all times. Have you ever heard the phrase fair weather friends? A fair weather friend isn't a friend, are they? Anybody can hang out with you and everything's going your way. Somebody said some friends are like umbrellas. You can't find them when it's raining. Friends are consistent. A friend loves at all times. No such thing as a fair weather friend. Years ago, a newspaper in England ran a contest among their readers to submit what they felt the best definition of a friend was. And the board that was judging the contest said, "This is the winner. A friend is someone who comes in when the whole world has gone out." Friendship, consistent. Second, a good friend is honest. And that's where sometimes you find out if you've got that level of friendship or not. Proverbs 27:6, "Wounds from a friend can be trusted." The King James says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend." It's a good friend who has the courage to say to you, "You might want to think about what you're doing here." Now, again, and we don't have time to go into all of this, but they have to have the right. You can't just go up to somebody that you're a casual friend with and try to correct their lifestyle. But, we're talking about those deep friends that really know you and you know them and you trust each other, and you've given them that level of access to you to where they can say, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" And Solomon says that those wounds can be trusted. It might hurt you, but they've got your best interest at heart. Would you rather go to a physician who has found something seriously wrong with you, but says, "Oh, everything's fine"? Or would you rather go to the one who says, "You've got a problem, this is what it is, we need to fix it"? And a good friend is someone who you have given the right and who is willing to say to you, "Are you sure this is what you want to do here?" Honesty. A good friend is supportive. Great passage, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, also written by Solomon, verses 9 and 10. "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. And let me just say to those of you who are watching online, if you hear some noise in the background, we've got some construction going on behind us. The video's not messing up, your computer's not messing up. We've just got some noise behind us. So focus. We appreciate you watching. But a good friend is supportive. Sometimes you'll hear people who have had a significant public fall from grace. When they are interviewed, they'll say, I learned who my true friends were. When everybody else was leaving me, when everyone else was bailing out, I learned who my true friends were. I fell and they were there to help me up. A good friend is supportive, and a good friend is sacrificial. Paul says in Romans 16 about Priscilla and Aquila, they risked their lives for me. Wow. That's pretty substantial friendship. So how do you choose a friend? Solomon gives us some decent advice here. He says, first of all, avoid angry people. Proverbs 22, verses 24 and 25. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. So if you've got somebody in your life that's always blowing up, that's always blowing their top and always angry at people, be careful about letting them in as a close friend, or it's going to be contagious. I read about a man who had a lot of trouble making friends. He couldn't understand why, so he went to a counselor, and he was trying to talk through how much difficulty he was having making a good friend. And the counselor was asking him some questions and didn't quite understand what the man had said in response. And he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Would you mind repeating yourself?" And the guy said, "Are you deaf or are you just an idiot? For some reason, I can't make any friends. Can't you listen to me?" So maybe we knew the answer, right? Solomon says, stay away from somebody who is eagerly angered. Don't make them your good friend. He said, and this is a verse we talked about last week, avoid people who gossip. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 19. A gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. We spent some time on this last Sunday. Make sure that you understand that if they're betraying secrets to you, they're betraying secrets about you. And if they're talking to you about other people, they are talking to other people about you. So avoid people who gossip. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19, where there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. Avoid angry people, avoid gossips, avoid fools. Proverbs 14, verse 7, stay away from a fool, for you will not find knowledge on their lips. You can go back into our sermon archives and find several sermons through the book of Proverbs on what it means to be a fool. But in essence, just looking at Proverbs chapter 1, you can distill what Solomon says about fools into this. It's someone who refuses to accept God's truth. It's someone who ridicules God's truth, and someone who refuses to be corrected by God's truth. If you know somebody like that, I'm not talking about somebody who's just not committed their lives to Christ. A fool is somebody who is rejecting and rebelling and making fun of the Word of God. If you know those kind of people, do not bring them into your close circle of friendship, because they are going to bring you down. Well, when you have these friends, how do you treat them? It's amazing how practical the book of Proverbs is. Did you know this was in the Bible? Seldom set your feet in your neighbor's house. Too much of you, and they will hate you. Here's my translation of that. Respect their space. You ever have those friends that you really don't ever invite back over to your house the second time because the first time you did, they just didn't know when it was time to go home? And it was kind of like you had to say, "Would y'all lock up, please? It's time for me to go to sleep." We respect their space. There are those friends who will just latch onto you and just drain every bit of energy out of you, and they don't have any kind of respect for personal space or boundaries or any of those kind of things. Solomon, thousands of years ago, said, just don't hang out all the time at your neighbor's house. They're going to get tired of you if you're around there too much. Respect their space. Second, be sensitive to them. This may be my new favorite verse in the Bible. Proverbs 27:14. He who blesses his friend with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him. Solomon was apparently not a morning person. That's a fantastic verse. If you bless your friend with a loud voice early in the morning, he'll think you're cursing him. He's not had his coffee yet. What he's saying is be sensitive to them. Some people are morning people, some people aren't. Somebody said if the Lord had wanted me to watch the sunrise, he'd have put it at noon. And we need to be sensitive, because just because you're up and at 'em at 5 a.m. doesn't mean that everybody else is. And so you got to be sensitive to it. That's a great verse. Don't bless your friend too loud early in the morning. He'll think you're cussing him because he's not awake yet. Be sensitive. Isn't that important, to be sensitive to people in our lives? And then stick with them. Goes back to our text, Proverbs 17:17. A brother is born for a time of adversity. When you've got a friend, stick with them. When the whole world's going out, you make sure you're there for them. Stick with them through the times of trouble. Actually, as I was studying this verse, I found that it could also be translated, a brother is born from a time of adversity. And that the group of scholars that believe it's that way say that there's a difference in this verse between a friend and a brother. A brother is born when you've been through the fire together, when you've been through adversity together. I remember several years ago attending a seminar where Bill Hybels was one of the speakers, and he was talking about the ministry of Willow Creek, and he said at this stage of his life, the thing that brought him the most joy was when he was in a staff meeting and he looked around the table at the men and women who had been at his side all the way through that ministry. He said, we've been through some things together, and we fought some battles together, and we shed tears together, and we bled for each other. That's that brother is born for a time of adversity. When you've been through the fire with somebody, when you've been through struggles with somebody, when you've got scars on each other's back from looking out for each other, that's changes from a friend to a brother. But a brother sticks with you through those times of adversity. That's a rare friend that doesn't run away from you when things get tough. And many people believe that this verse, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity, is really a prophecy about Jesus. Now, I don't know if I would go that far, but I do know this. It certainly describes what a friend we have in Jesus. He sticks with us, he's consistent. He loves us. He's there no matter what. He'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. What a friend we have in Jesus. And this phrase, a brother is born for a time of adversity, I was looking through Charles Spurgeon's sermon on this verse, and I'm just going to give you the high points. I wish I could read it to you because he was eloquent. But he talks about Christ being born for a time of adversity. That the reason Jesus was born was to be that friend to us, and that friend that is with us in a time of adversity. And he says he was born for a time of adversity. He said the reason he was born was because we were in adversity because of sin. That because sin came into the world, because of what Adam and Eve did, we were in a great need, and we had great adversity. And so our Savior was born for that time of adversity. And then he says he was born for a time of adversity because he has the ability to sympathize with us in our times of adversity. Hebrews 2:18, a great verse, that because Christ suffered when he was tempted, He's able to comfort those of us who are tempted. I mean, I'm sure that I will repeat this several times over the next 3 weeks. But the amazing thing about the Christmas story, and of course, the most amazing thing is redemption, but is that he felt what we do. He lived the human experience. From the fact that he was born in a manger, he lived the human experience. He was not sheltered. Uh, I had a conversation with somebody a few years ago that said, man, things are really, really tough. We are having it really rough. Business is going south, and we're just having a very difficult time. If this doesn't change before long, we're going to have to dig into our savings account. And I thought, savings account? You have a savings account? It's like sometimes, and I'm sure you've had that experience. No, you don't have any idea what you're talking about when you think that's hard times and you still got a year, in savings. But it's important for us to understand that Jesus was born for that time of adversity. He lived through it. He was tempted like we are. He knew the frustration of his own family rejecting him. He knew the frustration of his closest friends denying him. He understood that. And so therefore, he's able to identify with us and sympathize with us. When you're at the end of yourself and all you can pray is, oh Lord, if you'll listen, you'll hear him say, yeah, I know, because he's been here. Also, he gives his close presence to us when we're in times of adversity. Now, that's not always the case. I had a little argument with Charles Spurgeon at that point, because it's not always the case that God shows his closest presence when we're going through times of adversity. I ran into one of my residents in the hall a while back, and I could tell she was not feeling well. I said, you okay? And she said, no. She said, I tell you, Chaplain, it just seems like sometimes God's forgotten I even exist. And we all understand that feeling. But we also, I hope, have had the feeling of going through a time of adversity and you could just sense the presence of God. You could just know he was there. Gordon Jensen, that we had the privilege of meeting, and he ministered to us in one of our churches, wrote a song called He's as Close as the Mention of His Name. And he told the story. It was about a time when his wife was pregnant and she had a very difficult pregnancy and had a very difficult childbirth experience. And he said there was at some point through the day when they didn't know if the baby was going to live and really didn't know if she was going to live. And he said, you talk about a dark day. He said, that was a dark day. But he said they wheeled her back into the room and said, looks like the baby's going to be okay. Your wife's going to be okay. And he said, when she woke up enough, all we could do was hold hands and whisper, Jesus. He said, but when we did, that room was filled with his presence. And he wrote a song, at the very thought of Jesus, his presence can be found. He's as close as the mention of his name. And Spurgeon says, Jesus was born for a time of adversity because he shares his closest presence with us when we're going through those times of adversity. He also says that he was born for a time of adversity because we gain a deeper knowledge of God through those times of adversity. And we know that's true. Spurgeon said in another case, he said, everything that I learned about God in my good times, you could fit on the head of a pin. But what I learned about God in the tough times would fill volumes of my library. And you probably know that's true. Where do you learn the faithfulness of God when you're going through tough times? Where do you learn about the promises of God when you're going through tough times? Where do you learn that you can trust him when you go through the tough times? And so he's born for a time of adversity. And we could spend time in this room this morning talking about the prophecy of Isaiah 9:6, how he has been our wonderful counselor, our mighty God, our everlasting Father, our Prince of Peace. And we know that when we're lonely, he's Emmanuel, God with us. When we're weak, he's the arm of the Lord. When we're troubled, he's the Prince of Peace. When we're tempted, he's the way of escape. When we're in danger, he's our deliverer. When we're in darkness, he's our light. When we're confused, he's our truth. When we're lost, He's the way. Whatever it is that we need a friend for, he is our friend. There's a staggering verse in John 15. It's verse 15 where Jesus says to his disciples, I have called you friends. It's an amazing thing that God has called us his friends. I understand that in the courts of the Roman emperors and some Eastern kings, there was a select group of people called the friends of the king. They had access to the king, no one else did. They were actually the only people allowed to go into his private chambers in the morning before the day started. He would talk to them before he talked to his military people or his political people. They were the friends of the king. And the incredible thing is, we're the friends of the king. Christ has called us his friends. What a friend we have in Jesus. That close intimacy of friendship. As I was thinking about that, I remembered also John 15:14, where Jesus says, you are my friends if you do what I command. See, that's one thing that Jesus can pull rank on us. We can't tell our human friends, you're my friends if I do what I say, what you say. No. Jesus says, you're my friends if you do what I say. If you do what I command, you're my friends. I heard a preacher ask a young man, or of a preacher who asked a young man after the church service, are you a friend of Jesus? Yes, I'm a friend of Jesus. I said, you sure you're a friend of Jesus? Yes, I'm a friend of Jesus. I said, well, Jesus says you're my friends if you do what I command you. Are you a friend of Jesus? And the young man just turned and walked away. Now, that's a high standard, isn't it? Jesus says you're my friends if you do what I tell you to do. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Father, may we be good friends. We are living in a world where friendship is rare. Real, true, biblical friendship is so rare. May we be consistent friends. And sometimes, Lord, we have our friends who go through difficulties and everybody tends to run away. May we not be that kind of a friend. May we stick with our friends. And then, Lord, help us to be reminded of the friendship that you offer us. That you're not just our forgiver, you're our friend. And we can talk to you about anything that's going on in our lives because you know it. You know the frustrations we feel, the aggravations we feel. You know the joy we experience. May we, Lord, learn even more over these next few weeks as we get busier with the Christmas season. May, underneath it all, there just be a constant reminder that you're our friend. That yes, you came to forgive our sins, but you also came so that you could be our friend. And Lord, when we feel like you have forgotten us, please whisper to us that you are still there, that you will never leave us, you will never forsake us. Some of us maybe in this room today are just barely hanging on, and we needed to be reminded that you are there with us. You're never going to let us go. You're never going to forsake us, and we can be open and honest with what's going on in our lives with you, and you're not going to walk away from us. We thank you for that. So now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you and give you his peace now and evermore. Amen. God bless you. Thanks for coming out today. You're dismissed.